Welcome to Geek Fan and Media. I'm your host, Chris, and you guys, we got so much to discuss in today's video. James Gunn delivered his final interview for his press tour for Superman. He's been around the world. I can only imagine how exhausted this man must feel after, this entire press tour for Superman. But, I think it's definitely worth it. He was paid $15 million for directing Superman, you guys. That is a massive payday. That's not even talking about his position as CEO, co-CEO of DC Studios, and what seven figures he's making over there. He's getting a massive payday, but it must be worth it because Superman is a big hit right now. A lot of people are loving it. It's a brand new start to the DC universe in the right direction that is very hopeful, and I'm really excited to see where we go, especially with Peacemaker Season 2 dropping next month, you guys. But this final interview, you guys, James Gunn sat down with Josh, and boy, it was very, very good. It was very intriguing and very insightful. I mean, he talked about so many stuff, Matt Reeves and his Batman stuff, the future DC projects, certain projects that, that haven't gotten off the ground. He talked about the whole transition to him getting the job, as co-CEO of DC Studios and what it was like when Warner Brothers announced Henry Cavill's returning as Superman. That was quite fascinating. That's the topic I really do want to lead with you guys because that was absolutely insanity to me. So James Gunn said that the day his deal was closed and finalized as co-CEO of DC Studios, Warner Brothers announced Henry Cavill's return as Superman. Now, you guys remember, it was ginormous. Henry Cavill as Superman showing up at the end of Black Adam. Everyone was like, oh shit, he's back. It was exciting news. This was before James Gunn officially took over as co-CEO. But he stated, you guys, without his knowledge, even with him planning a Superman movie, he said he felt awful with what happened with Henry Cavill. And he also dived deep into some tea about this whole situation. He also said, he suggested that various people were trying to force their way into DC, which was the reason why it happened. That was clearly The Rock. The Rock thought he was what was his infamous phrase? His infamous phrase, the hierarchy of DC is about to change or some shit like that. That was The Rock. The Rock, the reason, with Henry Cavill coming back as Superman was because of The Rock and his production team pushing Warner Brothers for Henry Cavill to come back. The Rock, he really wanted to lead the charge, for DC Studios or for the DCEU with Black Adam, even potentially planning a Black Adam versus Justice League or, versus the Suicide Squad. It was crazy, absolutely insanity to me that, that this truthfully went down the way it did. And it sucks for Henry Cavill because you can only imagine. And James Gunn stated, him and Peter, they had a meeting with him. They brought him in and they had a discussion and they talked to him and they had to, tell him that he wasn't going to be returning and that his Superman film was going to be a complete reboot into this brand new universe. And Henry Cavill, he said, was very polite and, very positive about it. And he said he wanted to say, to come out on his own terms, and make that announcement that, he will not be returning as Superman. And he did. I remember that Instagram video, you guys. I remember both those Instagram videos where he, stated he was returning. And then, a couple of weeks later, I'm not returning. Fans were devastated. But ultimately, I think it worked out for the best. Because now we have David Cornsweet, who just embodies Superman so well. And, Henry Cavill's legacy will, it will live on. It will live on. Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, it will live on, you guys. And he even talked about potentially wanting to work with Henry Cavill further down the line in DC Studios. I was like, that'd be quite fascinating. I mean, a lot of people were petitioning, oh my God, I saw it's like General Zod. I was like, Henry Cavill? Man, can you imagine, dude? And then he ends up snapping his neck. That would be absolutely insanity to me. But yeah, man, The Rock trying to force his way into DC Studios and trying to lead the charge, I ultimately would have absolutely failed. Because although Black Adam wasn't a terrible movie, it was very much enjoyable. I really enjoyed, the supporting characters like Dr. Fate. Hawkman was freaking awesome. It just ultimately fell short. It fell short of the expectations. And The Rock has been trying to get Black Adam made for years, you guys. Years. The insanity. The fact that, it was like a 12-year or 13 or 15-year run where he was still wrestling, that he was trying to get Black Adam made. But I am glad that everything worked out for the best, you guys. We got so many topics to go over, you guys. It's absolutely insanity. But this is not a scoop from James Gunn. This is something completely separate. But Matthew Orton's script for the Deathstroke and Bane movie has been submitted to James Gunn and Peter Safran. Now, he wasn't asked this question during this interview. This is just another inside scooper reporting this, which I cannot wait for. I think to do a Batman film with Deathstroke and Bane teaming up against who knows, maybe Batman might appear. That would be absolutely awesome. I would love to see Deathstroke, especially seeing Deathstroke teased in the DCEU, you guys, by Joe Manganiello. Oh my God, the costume, the suit looks so perfect. It was awesome. We were robbed, especially when you hear, what Ben Affleck's Batman movie was going to be about, going up against Deathstroke. Can you imagine? That shit would have been on some Arkham shit. Boy, oh boy. But I'm really hoping that they can do this, this spin-off film with Deathstroke and Bane. That would be absolutely insanity to me. And Batman would have to show up, right? Batman has to show up in, certain, Batman spin-off films. It would just feel weird because James Gunn did clarify on some things about Matt Reeves' Batman and this universe and that universe, which we will go over, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I still don't buy it. I don't buy it, James Gunn. I don't buy that Matt Reeves' Batman is not going to merge over with your DC universe. But also, you guys, James Gunn will not be writing Creature Commandos 2. Workload management. He said he was exhausted, and he's trying to balance work, life, and everything. Co-CEO, being married, being a creative, being a director. It's insane how much he has done. Because he said, he was on his honeymoon, in Hawaii. He was writing Peacemaker Season 2 while doing Superman and Creature Commandos. It was so much. So I do think James Gunn is going to scale back a lot and be more of the overseer and, less of the creative head on each and every single project the DC studio puts out, because it is a lot. Even Kevin Feige doesn't do that. You know what I mean? And they technically have the same position. So I definitely think it's a smart idea for James Gunn to let more other creatives take over certain projects so he can actually get a break and live a life, because, boy, he has been busy. When you think about it, he's been on a run. It was The Suicide Squad. Then it was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special, which they shot, at the same time. Then he jumped right into, to Superman and then writing, Peacemaker Season 2. It's just like, it's so much. And he's currently writing his next project right now. But it's a lot for James Gunn. Absolutely insanity to me. But James Gunn gave some details on his next project. He said that his next film is not going to be World's Finest. He says Superman is very important to the film. The announcement will be sooner than later. Not World's Finest, not a Superman sequel. So where are we going with this, James Gunn? A lot of fans want to see Superman again. I know I do. He did also state that Superman will appear in some project sometime soon. I'm like, obviously, that's going to be Supergirl. Supergirl showed up in his movie. Why wouldn't Superman show up in her movie in some kind of capacity? I don't know if it's going to be like a cameo, but I doubt it's going to be a massive supporting role because, you solely want to focus on Supergirl. So whenever that may be, I'm excited for James Gunn's next film because this guy's been cooking for years. I've loved all of his work so far, you guys. Really, really impressed. Also, James Gunn reiterates that the DCU Batman will be separate from the Reeves-verse. He also states Brave and the Bold and other Batman films probably won't be in the same calendar year. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. You can't have Batman Brave and the Bold come out the same year as the Batman Part 3. That would just confuse a whole lot of fans. It would be so messy and convoluted and I just think it's a bad idea. I don't like the idea of having two separate Batmans. I don't. Even if one is still young in year 5 and the other one's year 20, 20 years in Gotham, Alfred. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I don't want to see two separate versions of Batman. I don't. I'm just really hoping that Matt Reeves' universe is able to coexist inside what James Gunn has been cooking for his DC studios. I mean, that's especially seeing the contrast difference between David Cornsweet and Robert Pattinson's Batman. They would feed so well off of each other. I'm telling you guys, it's a missed opportunity. Missed opportunity, but we'll see what happens. James Gunn also states that Aquaman and The Flash probably won't happen, or we probably won't hear or see anything from those characters in the next 2 years or so, which makes sense. They're still fresh. Aquaman and Lost Kingdom and The Flash just came out like damn near a year and a half ago, and they both were not the best films. So a lot of fans still have that sour, bad taste in their mouths after those movies, and I think it's a smart idea not to lead with those characters. There are so many other members of the Justice League you can lead with. You don't have to pick the Flash and Aquaman right now. But if you do, cast Alan Richardson as Aquaman did. Some of you guys may know he did play Aquaman in Smallville. That was so awesome, dude. Oh, man. Banger of a show, you guys. But whoever they do decide to cast as the Flash, and Aquaman, but it's going to be interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to see how those two characters do come into the DCU and how drastically different they're going to be from what Zack Snyder vision was. Especially for the Flash, because I never liked Ezra Miller. I always thought that was a terrible miscast. It was awful. Awful, 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 awful. But we'll see what happens with that. Also, James Gunn states that the Authority has been rough to get going. The writer moved on to another DC project. You have to remember, the Authority was announced at the very start of that big announcement from DC Studios. They're struggling to get the story off the ground. And James Gunn stated, if the story and the script are not ready and, him and Peter Safran and the creatives at DC aren't happy with it, they're not moving forward with it whatsoever. And I think it's a brilliant idea because you don't want to put out subpar and mediocre comic book films. I love the fact that he talks so much about each film, each project feeling so unique, so tonally, so different from each other, like a comic book series. Each comic book feels different from one another. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. I don't want the same old recipe over and over again. I feel like that's what we had from the MCU for many years. That's why I'm really excited about the Fantastic Four First Steps. It feels so drastically, tonally, different from anything we've gotten from, the MCU in the last damn near 10 years. So I like that idea. If the Authority does get made, I won't get butthurt. I've read the comics. The characters are okay to me. I'm not like, oh, the Authority. There's so many other characters and so many other projects, you guys, I'm looking forward to. He also gave an update on Swamp Thing. He said, look, man, James Mangold is just busy. He hasn't turned in the script yet. He's busy doing all the billion other movies and projects he's working on. But he said, they recently spoke and, they're getting excited again about Swamp Thing. I'm like, damn, Swamp Thing was announced damn near almost 3 years ago. James Mangold's been that busy, and he has. He's been putting out a lot of work. But, I would love to see Swamp Thing come to the big screen. I want to see more of that supernatural stuff. That would be so awesome. And James Mangold, you guys, the guy directed Logan, arguably one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. I need me a Swamp Thing like tomorrow. Also, you guys, Luca Guadagnino, I hope I pronounced that last name right. He has left Sergeant Rock, the movie. You guys remember a couple months ago, it was reported that it was scrapped, it was canceled, but he also confirmed that it's still going to happen and it's getting closer. I can care less about a Sergeant Rock film. Sorry, I'm being dead ass honest with you guys. I've never read the comics. I've seen, certain comic book panels, and I'm like, I'm okay. It's not necessarily my cup of tea at all. And then also, he was asked what director he would love for that director to join the DCU. And he stated, you guys, Matt Reeves. He was like, Matt Reeves hasn't directed, he's not directing a DCU film yet. I was like, here we go again. He's busy with the Batman Part 2. But it's weird because he's also like side producing certain projects like Clayface, for DC Studios and for the DCU. So I'm like, it doesn't make any kind of sense. What's happening here? What is happening here? The fact that he's in a whole different other universe, but, he's kind of producing other projects for, your universe, it makes no sense. That's why I always say, man, that Batman Brave and the Bold ain't happening. It's not. But Batman did show up in Creature Commandos, and he did say, those characters will appear in live action. And that was not Robert Pattinson's Batman. No, it wasn't, you guys. But we'll see what happens. We will see. And the final one, you guys, James Gunn says that Wonder Woman is in a clear take and direction, and that feels very distinct from what we've seen before. He's excited about Wonder Woman. And there was this article a couple days ago how Wonder Woman has been fast-tracked for DC Studios. It looks like the script is looking great. And, James Gunn is very excited about it to get, to get probably the series and the film, because Paradise Lost was announced a couple years ago too, and that never, nothing really happened with that. But that's probably going to be a direct correlation to the film, you would think. But, he said they haven't started casting yet. They have no idea who they're going to cast for these characters. He always states, nobody will be cast unless the script is ready to go. That's facts. Batman, I'm pretty sure he has a couple of ideas, some people he would love to play Batman if Batman Brave and the Bold does get off the ground and they don't use, Matt Reeves' Batman. It's a strong possibility. But I like the fact that he stated that, nothing is moving forward. I love that. I think it's a brilliant idea. Nothing moves forward unless the script is complete and that they are really happy with you guys. But there it is, man. I mean, there's so much to discuss within this interview. Like I said, it was a great interview. His last final, interview after this exhausting, press tour for Superman and going around the world promoting DC Studios. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. How many times have you guys seen Superman? Where do you think Superman will end its theatrical run? Fantastic Four releases next week. What will be the third week drop-off for Superman? And then all the topics we discussed, you guys, which one was your favorite? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And of course, thank you guys for taking time out of your day for watching Geek Fandom Media. Peace.